There is something almost inexplicable we feel when someone thinks intensely about us. A sudden presence, a shiver, a memory that appears out of nowhere. What if these sensations were not coincidences? What if, in fact, they were deep psychic manifestations rooted in a collective unconscious that connects all souls? According to Carl Jung's analytical psychology, there is an invisible link between minds and hearts that transcends time and space. In this script, we will dive into this mysterious universe to understand how certain signs can reveal that someone, especially him, is thinking of you right now. And when these signs appear, it is almost impossible to ignore them. If you have ever felt this unexplainable connection, write in the comments, "I trust the energy between us." Your story may inspire others to recognize the signs revealed by the unconscious. Also, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel and leave your support in the comments. That strengthens this space of awareness and allows us to keep sharing content like this. In Jungian analytical psychology, the human mind is not an isolated island, but an energetic field in constant exchange with the collective and the deep unconscious. When someone thinks intensely about another person, that psychic energy can manifest in symbolic and even physical ways, especially when there is an archetypal connection between them. This connection occurs through the collective unconscious, a kind of reservoir of universal images and emotions that dwell in all of us. One of the central concepts that explains this dynamic is projection. When he thinks of you intensely, it is possible that his psyche is projecting repressed or unintegrated aspects of his own shadow, parts of himself he has not yet consciously recognized. And often, the figure that represents this mirror is precisely the one with whom he shares a strong emotional bond. Furthermore, the archetypes of anima and animus, the inner representations of the feminine and the masculine within the psyche, are crucial here. When there is constant attraction or remembrance, it is likely that the image of the other is activating these inner forces, creating an emotional echo that translates into recurring thoughts. Individuation, the process of self-knowledge and integration of these aspects, can also make such manifestations more conscious, allowing one to perceive the signs more clearly. Therefore, the signs that someone is thinking of you are not just vague intuitions, but real expressions of a deep psychic dynamic. When we understand this symbolic language, we are able to see beyond the visible and grasp what the unconscious is trying to communicate. When two people share an intense emotional connection, something much deeper than reason comes into play. Jung identified that beyond the personal unconscious, there exists a collective unconscious, a psychic layer shared by all humanity. It is in this field that symbols, archetypes, and universal emotions circulate, and it is also in this invisible space that deep connections remain alive, even when there is no direct communication between two people. When he thinks intensely of you, that psychic energy can move through this symbolic field and reach your awareness in the form of subtle signs. The activation of the collective unconscious between two people occurs when there is an emotional, symbolic, or archetypal bridge between them. If he has a meaningful emotional bond with you, his thoughts and feelings can cross the invisible plane and reach you consciously, especially if you are receptive to that connection. This happens, for example, when you suddenly feel a change of mood for no apparent reason, when your body reacts with a shiver or chill without physical cause, or even when you dream of him in a context filled with powerful archetypal symbols such as deep waters, mirrors, or labyrinths. These phenomena are not mere coincidences or fantasies of a romantic mind. For Jung, the psyche is made up of living images and symbols that communicate messages through archetypal language. When he thinks of you, he activates not only memory or desire, but also the archetypes you represent in his psyche. And as these images move, they can touch your unconscious, like the energetic field between you, picking up that emission and responding with sensations, thoughts, or sudden impulses. There is also a symbolic exchange that occurs in the non-verbal language of the unconscious. Without rationally noticing it, you may start to recall specific details that would only make sense if he were present in your life at that very moment. It could be a fragrance that suddenly fills the air, a song that plays unexpectedly, or a name that keeps appearing in random situations. These signs are not objective proof, but subjective clues that the collective unconscious is being activated by another person's psychic presence. Another factor that amplifies this connection is the state of emotional openness. The more you are in touch with your intuition and in a process of individuation, that is, deep self-knowledge, the greater your ability to perceive these signs. This is because the ego begins to align with the self, the organizing center of the psyche, and symbolic perception intensifies. When the rational mind does not interfere, the unconscious can manifest more clearly, and it is at that moment that you may strongly feel if he is indeed thinking of you. On the other hand, it is important to recognize that these signs may also emerge from your own psyche, as reflections of desires or projections. That is why self-knowledge is essential, to distinguish when what you feel comes from the other or from within yourself. Still, when there is a true symbolic connection between two people, it is possible to clearly perceive the moments when he is present in thought, even if not in words. The activation of the collective unconscious works like a silent bridge. It does not need words, messages, or physical gestures. It is enough for him to think of you with strong emotion for that symbolic energy to manifest. And when it happens, the signs appear. They do not ask permission. They simply show up. If you have ever felt something you could not explain, but that was too real to ignore, it may have been this invisible bond revealing itself through the silent language of the psyche. Carl Jung coined the term synchronicity to describe events that occur simultaneously and carry deep meaning, even without direct causal links. For Jung, these meaningful coincidences are manifestations of the collective unconscious and reflect a hidden order in the universe. When two people are energetically connected, especially at intense emotional levels, such synchronicities become more frequent and noticeable. They are essentially symbolic ways the universe responds to the joint vibration of those souls. Imagine you are going about your daily routine when suddenly you feel an inexplicable urge to think of him. Soon after, you see his name in a notification, or someone mentions something about him, or a particular song plays unexpectedly. These events are not just empty coincidences. For the symbolic and unconscious mind, they are responses. And if he is thinking of you intensely, these occurrences tend to intensify, like vibrational echoes moving across the symbolic field of reality. Synchronicity is more than coincidence. It carries a message, and this message, when tied to an emotional bond, can represent the psychic presence of the other quietly entering your field of perception. This happens because the unconscious is in tune with larger patterns that do not obey logical laws of time and space. Instead, these patterns reveal themselves when there is inner openness to perceive symbols and when there is a strong enough emotional bond to activate this movement. These symbolic manifestations may also surface in moments of emotional fragility, such as longing, doubt, or unresolved desire. It is in such states of openness and vulnerability that the unconscious communicates more strongly, revealing through synchronicities that someone is thinking of you. It could be an unexpected call, a shared dream, or even the sense that you are about to see him, and then he appears. These occurrences are not merely casual but expressions of the symbolic field of the psyche in action. When Jung studied clinical cases, he noticed that certain synchronicities manifested when his patients were about to integrate important aspects of the unconscious. In the case of an emotional connection, such moments indicate that something is moving in the deeper layers, in both you and him. In other words, if he is going through an internal process in which you represent a central figure, the collective unconscious may bring it to the surface through symbolic events. The same occurs on your side if you are energetically receptive. For these signs to be recognized as synchronicities, it is essential to develop a symbolic perception of reality. This means looking beyond immediate logic and recognizing the hidden meanings each event may carry. When the rational mind grows quiet, symbolism speaks, and the universe, always in dialogue with the soul, reveals its messages with silent elegance. Synchronicity, in this sense, is like a bridge between two worlds, the inner and the outer, the invisible and the manifest. There is also emotional synchronicity, when two people feel something at the same time without any direct contact. You feel sadness, and later find out he was going through a difficult moment, or you feel sudden joy, and soon after receive a message from him. These are small signs that the connection does not depend on physical presence, but on the emotional and archetypal resonance between you. It is his soul touching yours, even from afar. When he thinks of you with genuine emotional intensity, the symbolic field of the collective unconscious stirs, and in that movement external reality responds. Pay attention to small signs, to details, to repetitions that arise from nowhere. All of these may be the universe pointing to him, vibrating in your direction. Do not seek them obsessively, but stay open, because when synchronicity happens, it leaves no doubts. It silently reveals that something greater is at work. In Jungian psychology, the image of the feminine within a man is represented by the anima, while the masculine within a woman is represented by the animus. These archetypes are more than simple inner representations. They are profound psychic forces made up of memories, feelings, symbols, and desires that strongly influence our choices, passions, and thoughts. When a man thinks intensely of a woman, that intensity is often related to the activation of his anima. And this is where you come in, not as a mere object of desire, but as a symbolic figure representing something essential in his psychic journey. The anima is formed partly by the man's experiences with important female figures throughout life, mother, sisters, teachers, former partners, but it also includes collective archetypal elements, the image of the feminine as receptive, emotional, intuitive, and transformative. When you resonate with these qualities on a deep level, consciously or unconsciously, your image can begin to inhabit his inner world, even if he does not rationally understand why you are constantly present in his thoughts. This projection of the anima can occur suddenly and intensely. He begins to think of you frequently, even as he tries to ignore or repress the impulse. This happens because, by touching deep parts of his psyche, often those not yet integrated, you become a living symbol of his own search for wholeness. Jung said that the soul longs for totality, and the anima represents that longing within a man. When he sees in you qualities that connect him to his emotional, sensitive, intuitive, or spiritual side, you stop being just someone and become a reflection of his soul. But there is a trap in this process: idealization. The projection of the anima tends to place the woman on a symbolic pedestal, turning her into an almost mystical figure. This explains why he may think of you obsessively, even without concrete closeness. He's not only thinking of you as a real person, but of the symbolic image your presence awakened in his psyche. This image can be both enchanting and unsettling, for it activates desires, memories, and old wounds. Once it settles in, the thoughts come in waves, intense, repetitive, involuntary. However, the more he moves away from idealization and begins to consciously integrate these projections, the more genuine this connection becomes. At that point, he can realize you are not a static symbol, but a human being with depth, complexity, and shadows as well. This transition is fundamental in individuation, the Jungian journey towards psychic wholeness. Thinking of you at this stage is no longer just the result of projection, but the authentic resonance between two souls in the process of maturing. For you, recognizing this movement is essential. If you feel that he thinks of you often, even in silence, it is possible you inhabit his inner world as an archetypal manifestation. This reveals itself in small gestures. He suddenly appears, sends a seemingly random message, or mentions you at unusual times. These are indirect ways of expressing the symbolic impact you have on his psyche, even if he is not fully aware of it. And when there is energetic reciprocity, his anima can connect with the animus within you, creating a kind of psychic dance where both represent essential parts of each other. At this level of depth, thoughts do not arise merely from the mind, but from the unconscious, as silent callings of the soul. And that is why these thoughts leave traces, signs, synchronicities, premonitions that manifest even without words. Therefore, if he is thinking of you now, it may be because your image awakened something far beyond reason. You may have stirred in him the deep desire to reconnect with his sensitivity, with his soul, with his unlived side. And this projection, when recognized and worked through, can open the way for a more conscious, real, and transformative connection. There is a part of the human psyche that remains hidden from awareness: the shadow. For Jung, the shadow represents all repressed, denied, or unrecognized aspects of our being: desires, emotions, impulses, and memories, excluded from consciousness for being judged unacceptable, dangerous, or incompatible with the image we cultivate of ourselves. When a man thinks constantly of a woman, Even while trying to ignore or deny the impulse, it is often the shadow at work. And that is why, even without admitting it, he may hold you in his thoughts in an intense and recurring way. The shadow contains not only what is negative, but also everything repressed out of fear, shame, or insecurity, including the deep desire for connection, intimacy, and vulnerability. For many men, especially those who have not emotionally accessed their inner world, such desire can seem threatening. If you represent, even unconsciously, a gateway to those repressed emotions, it is natural that he thinks of you frequently without knowing how to express or even understand this inner movement. It is common for such thoughts to come with contradictions. He may pull away while silently observing you. He may keep his distance but find indirect ways to approach. He may deny any feelings while his behavior shows the opposite. These contradictions are typical manifestations of the shadow, inner forces acting beyond consciousness, guiding actions, emotions, and thoughts without full control. When you awaken in him aspects he has not yet integrated, such as sensitivity, fragility, intense passion, or the feeling of not being in control, your image begins to inhabit the territory of the shadow. And once the shadow is activated, it demands attention. Thinking of you then becomes an unconscious way of processing that repressed content. He may not know why you are so present in his thoughts, but your psychic presence serves a purpose, leading him to parts of himself he has not yet acknowledged. This dynamic is not always comfortable. When the shadow is activated by another person's presence, it brings up resistance, fears, and emotional blocks. He may feel a strong impulse to pull away or avoid contact, precisely because being near you forces him to confront parts he would rather keep hidden. But paradoxically, the more he represses this content, the more it returns, in the form of insistent thoughts, vivid memories, intense dreams, and even involuntary physical reactions. It is important to understand that the shadow is not an enemy. It is an essential part of individuation, the journey towards psychic wholeness. By projecting the shadow onto another person, the unconscious creates an opportunity for recognition. If he sees in you something that attracts and simultaneously frightens him, it means you represent for him a mirror of unresolved inner aspects. And when not consciously acknowledged, these aspects continue to manifest as hidden desire, unexplained thoughts, a constant presence that insists on existing even in absence. On your side, perceiving these signs requires sensitivity but also discernment. Not every mental presence is a sign of love or a healthy bond. Sometimes, another person's mind fixates on you not out of true love, but because of what you symbolically represent: freedom, emotion, danger, salvation, challenge, healing. To recognize that you occupy this symbolic space in his inner world is to understand that in some way you are part of the self-discovery process he is still avoiding or beginning. And if you feel he is present in your own thoughts without rational explanation, it may be that there is an energetic exchange based on mutual shadow, parts of you and him recognizing and touching in silence. In this symbolic space, where hidden desire meets the wounded soul, thoughts become more than simple memories. They become callings, messages, living mirrors of what still needs to come to light. If he is thinking of you now, even without admitting it, perhaps it is because your presence touches exactly where he has avoided looking the most. And in that silent yet profound touch, the signs arise, insistent, undeniable, and full of meaning. Throughout this script, we explored the deepest layers of the human psyche to understand how someone's thoughts can cross the invisible and touch our soul. We discovered that it is not merely intuition or imagination, but real manifestations of the unconscious, whether through the activation of the collective unconscious, meaningful synchronicities, projections of the anima, or the hidden impulses of the shadow. When he thinks of you intensely, the psychic universe responds, and the signs appear, subtle, symbolic, powerful. This journey, based on Carl Jung's teachings, shows us that true knowledge of the other's feelings begins with self-knowledge. The more you connect with your essence, the more sensitive you become to what comes from another and to what arises from within yourself. Because everything true resonates, everything symbolic reveals itself. If this content spoke to your soul, subscribe to the channel now and activate notifications. Here, each video is an invitation to awaken consciousness and embrace inner transformation. And don't leave without watching the video appearing on your screen. It is the next step in your journey of discovery. Until then, remember, the invisible speaks. You just need to know how to listen.